They're neck and neck, Senator Obama and McCain. How are the Democrats going to narrow that gap?
Well, the latest polls have Senator Obama up a little bit, and I think partly that's a function of the current distress, economic distress, because I think the more people worry about the current set of circumstances, the more likely they are to change parties. I have always said that I thought Senator Obama would win this election because two-thirds of the American people are having trouble paying their bills, because Democratic registration is up and Republican registration is flat, and because he has offered some very specific and sensible economic reforms and health care reforms. And as I said, I've never concealed my admiration and affection for Senator McCain. I think he's a great man. But I think on the issues that matter to our future, the Obama-Biden team is more right. That's what I believe. And I believe they're going to win. But I think that it will be competitive until the end, and our side has to work hard. But I think what typically happens in these elections, if you look throughout American history, when the country's in a fix and you know where we're going is not sustainable, then there is typically a breakthrough. The biggest example of that was in 1860 when Abraham Lincoln was elected. The Republican Party had only been in existence for 4 years. But both the old Whig Party and the Democratic Party had proved unable to resolve the dilemma of how to hold the Union together and stop the spread of slavery. So they both had different approaches. Neither one were working. So the public said, okay, if we can't sustain this, we'll make a change. That's what I think now. I think that the people say, well, they had the Congress and the White House for 6 of the last 8 years. We're in trouble. We like Senator McCain. We recognize he's a little bit of a different kind of Republican, but we're going to make a change. And I think that's where they'll be. And I think you'll see a victory for Obama and Biden. But I don't think you'll see it clearly, barring some unforeseen development, like in some happens in debates we don't know about. It may not be apparent in the polls until last week or two of the election, but I believe it will be apparent on Election Day. I think Senator Obama will win this election.
Were you surprised by the Palin bounce for the McCain campaign?
No, she's an instinctively effective candidate, and with a compelling story, and I think it was exciting to some that she was a woman. It was exciting that she was from Alaska. It was exciting that she's sort of like the person she is. And she grew up came up in a political culture and a religious culture that is probably well to the right of the American center, but she didn't basically define herself in those terms. She basically said, look, this is where I'm from. I'm not going to impose this on you. This is what I want to do that I think we can all be a part of. So she handled herself very well. So I wasn't surprised. I think that, I disagree with them on a lot of these issues, and that's why, aside from my party affiliation, that's why I would be for Senator Obama and Senator Biden anyway. But I think I get why she's done so well. She's a mistake to underestimate her. She's got her intuitive skills are significant.
If McCain wins, will Hillary be back in 4 years?
I don't know. I think that, the one thing we've learned at our age is that, I hope we're both active till we're 90 and healthy. But I think that her focus will now be on what she can do in her present position to try to help deal with all these things that threw her into the presidential race in the first place. For example, today she gave the most detailed position I've seen on what she thought we ought to do in the finance crisis, and I completely agree with what she said. She said we ought to follow not just the Resolution Trust Corporation model for dealing with these homes and commercial properties. We ought to go back to the Homeowners Loan Corporation that was a product of the Depression. That actually made a profit for the American people by stabilizing what was otherwise a disastrous run on the market for financing homes, and people's home values were going through the floor.
What is your view of these bailouts that we've been seeing? Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and of course yesterday, AIG. Should the government be there if the financial services firms fail and take on too much risk?
I think in this case they had no choice, and I'll tell you why. I think that there was too little attention for too long to the real estate problems. I think Hillary called 2 years ago for some device to sort of stop the home mortgage foreclosures for the people that could pay and to rework the mortgages. Too little attention to the fact that the big finance houses were driven into housing and, in effect, assumed the role of traditional bankers with the derivatives and other things because there was no other place it was growing in our economy. If you and I had been working in one of these finance houses and we had to make a living, we had to manage our clients' money right, that's where we would have gone because it was the only growth area. And so we allowed this to happen for too long. I think the argument that we shouldn't do it because the taxpayers don't owe anything to Wall Street is rather short-sighted. That the people that are getting the shaft out here are the homeowners, the people that live in their neighborhood whose home values are going down, the people who are losing their jobs. In other words, this is not about bailing out Wall Street. This is about restoring confidence in America. This is a country with rising productivity in every year of this decade, which means the working people of this country and their managers are doing their job. It's still a country of innovation. It's still a country with available money to invest. And we have had these drastic distortions in the market, which have got us in this fix. I don't think there is any choice but for us to have the government sit down with the private sector and all the stakeholders and do more. And I think the longer you wait, ironically, the more you have to do and the more money you have to spend. So in a funny way, the people who are most against market intervention wind up having to preside over the biggest market intervention that costs the most money, because we all know that markets without disclosure, without capital requirements, without market requirements, if you don't have these kinds of things to keep the market in tow, they all tend to unsustainable extremes. And that's where we are today. America is better than letting, just using trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth. You've got $2 trillion in home wealth that people have lost. We can't sustain it.
Where do you stop? Should they have bailed out Lehman Brothers? Should they be bailing out Morgan Stanley?
If I had to say, first, I think the Bear Stearns thing was necessary and it worked okay. It just didn't stem the tide because of the underlying massive amount of unsustainable debt in the real estate market, both residential